Welcome in, Dween Nation. We are the Dween Sports Podcast, and we are just about to get started. But before we do, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, and share so we can continue to be your fantasy sports podcast. Thanks for being part of Dween Nation, and enjoy the show. Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Pies, alongside Genoa Agudelo, and we are in the depths, in the middle of NFL training camp. What are we, 3 or 4 days in, and it's just going to continue rolling on. But today's a special episode because as it goes through, there are some important training camp battles that we need to monitor because the winner of said training camp battle will become extra valuable in fantasy. And as training camp and preseason runs through, we need to keep our eye on these players because they could become league-winning draft picks. So really excited to discuss with you, Genoa, about all the battles and close matchups we have. But before we do it, how you doing?
Justin, yo, Dween Nation. Justin, I'm doing amazing here. Not to mention, Justin, this week we do actually have a football game, an NFL game, the Hall of Fame game. I don't actually know who it is between. It might be, what, is it the Lions? I don't know.
Lions and the Chargers, yeah.
Lions and the Chargers there, and we got some football there. Of course, we won't see the typical starters, but hey, Justin, you see some NFL action there in July. I know it's the last day of July. It's looking like it'll be on there, but hey, it's football and it's the kickoff of preseason. So for the next couple of weeks there, we'll have some little bit of football going on there. Little sideline shots of all of our favorite players. You'll see Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson there, just seeing what their teams got to put out there. But Justin, I'm doing great. I'm so excited for this NFL 2025 season. It cannot get here quick enough. And you know what, Justin, cannot get here quick enough? These fantasy drafts there. I know you and I have 3 drafts in like a span of a day at the end of this time, around this time next month, Justin. And so I am just so excited. I can't wait to talk about this training camp battles.
Yeah, and I mean, like with the preseason, obviously, like for example, the Hall of Fame game, the Chargers are a big topic on this episode with some of their guys. Like each game actually matters. As fantasy football drafters, it's important we stay in tune with this, see what the coaches are saying. See if there's a lot of struggles or a lot of successes on the field. And let's start at a team that's been struggling a lot, and they have a quarterback discussion with the Cleveland Browns. As you can see, a room that looks like that color in the middle, brown. It's Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, and Deshaun Watson. Genoa, I'll throw it to you. What do you make of this quarterback room, and who do you think is going to come out in week 1?
Okay, well, first things first, let's talk about who's not going to come out here. And I think that the Browns got some couple cut candidates. And let's start off with Kenny Pickett there. We know what we've seen out of Kenny Pickett there when he was in Pittsburgh. Hey, thankfully he was able to take some snaps in the Super Bowl there as the Eagles are kind of resting their players at the end of that game where they dominated Kansas City. So I think that he's a cut candidate, right? And then we go to Deshaun Watson, who we kind of have in the middle there. He might not play. He might not. Who knows what's going on with Deshaun Watson? I think with Cleveland, you just got to cut your ties. I mean, yeah, you traded for him with my Houston Texans, and, we won the deal. But I think that you got to cut with him. So now it goes down to these 3 quarterbacks, the 2 rookies, Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. We got Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado, and old man Joe Flacco. I want to say he was out of Maryland. I could be wrong with that, Dween Nation. But Joe Flacco, this guy has seen every single defense imagined. I mean, he faced Ed Reed and Ray Lewis for like 10 years at practice. And then he had to go against the Patriots almost every year in the playoffs, not to mention J.J. Watt and my Houston Texans defense for those couple of those years. Those Steelers defenses, led by James Harrison and Troy Polamalu. So this guy's seen it all. I think you should start it off with Joe Flacco there, Justin, and kind of see what you can get out of the first 2 games, out of the first 2 to 3 games. If he's starting at quarterback, I do like Jerry Jeudy there. If you draft him in the 7th or 8th round, along that, don't overdraft for Jeudy. Maybe a daily fantasy guy like Jeudy with Flacco. But here's where it gets tricky there, Justin. If things start to kind of fall off, I say you just put in Shedeur Sanders. I mean, the media is going to be buzzing about it from the jump. It's Shedeur. He's a Sander. And I think that he's handled this training camp so far with a ton of maturity. You saw what happened during the draft where he went in day 3. And I feel like, you know what? I think that he could potentially be the starter going forward for Cleveland. Now, with Dylan Gabriel, lastly, I'm not really a fan of the lefty quarterbacks. I think it's just a disaster waiting to happen there in Cleveland, a disaster within the disaster. And I just feel like, you started off with Flacco, and then if the wheels fall off of Flacco, you go with Shador and just see what you got. Give him the whole season. He's going to have a couple games where he's struggling. He is a rookie that played in the Big 12. However, I like Shador with Cleveland, man. Just give him a chance in Stefanski's offense. I'm not a fan of Dylan Gabriel. I did love what he did with Oregon last year. I think they were the number one team up until the college football playoffs. But other than that, I'm still really not. I'm just something about it. I don't think his mechanics match with the NFL competition that I guess line up against them. But for me, Flacco and then Shador.
I think you have the right formula. That's kind of where I was thinking things are going to go. I think they will start Flacco. Obviously, they have the history with Flacco, being that he was there, 2 years ago, helped them make a playoff berth, even though they lost in the first round. And then, he's the age-old vet. He's 40 years old. And I checked for you, went to Pitt in Delaware as his college stint. But I completely agree with you. Kenny Pickett, I don't think he's long for this team. Deshaun Watson, they need to cut ties. And so when you look at Flacco starting week 1, you have a good point. Kind of ride Flacco until the wheels fall off or it's looking really bad. And unfortunately for Cleveland, it looks really bad. They start their season against the Bengals, then travel to Baltimore, then play the Packers, the Lions, the Vikings, at Pittsburgh, and then they play the Dolphins. So it's a tough sledding out the gate. So I think that we see Joe Flacco for maybe 4 to 5 weeks, and then they decide to move in the direction of Shador Sanders, which I agree. He is, since the whole draft debacle, I think he's been pretty under the radar, which is what he needs. And now he's got a chip on his shoulder being a 5th-round pick who was supposed to be a first-round pick. So give me Flacco, then give me Shador later in the season. So we're agreed there. Moving to the Colts, Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson. Obviously, AR has the tenure with the team. Former first round pick, 4th overall on the draft. Give me your thoughts on this quarterback battle.
Yeah, Justin, this one's a very tricky one. But one thing about the Colts that I haven't really been on board with them. Obviously, I'm a Houston Texans fan, and they're a divisional rival. But if I were to not be biased here, I'm going to go all the way with AR. This is a guy that you drafted not even 3 years ago, Justin. I mean, you took him with the 4th overall pick. And, with Daniel Jones, the only thing he has to offer is his rushing ability. That is about it. I still think that AR, I think he has time to grow. I think that he's had some injuries. I think going into last year, he had a shoulder injury that he was recovering from in his rookie year. And I think that, that did kind of play into his, training camp and how he was able to develop with his team and practice. And I just feel like he's still got some time. I am not giving up on Anthony Richardson. Actually, week 1 last year, my Texans actually started the season off in Indianapolis. And boy, did AR had a party. He threw all over my Texans. We were able to win. It was a nail biter, Justin. I don't know if you remember that. Week 1, he had a fantastic game. And then he showed some flashes along the way. And I want to say it was that matchup in Lambeau Field against the Packers where he didn't do anything. I think he only had and he only had 170 some yards passing. I don't know if they won that game or not, but I do remember that's kind of the downfall of the Colts offense, and it kind of went back and forth throughout the season. You saw Flacco there, who we just talked about in Indianapolis. I'm not giving up on AR. I think that he still has time to. We've seen what Daniel Jones did in New York, and I really wasn't a fan of it. So I'm still not a fan of him. I do like AR, and I still believe in him.
Yeah, with me here, I don't really believe that Anthony Richardson is that franchise piece, in my opinion. I think that we've seen the injuries be an issue, and then obviously the accuracy is a major issue for Anthony Richardson. And when you look at Daniel Jones, although he has had a undesirable career thus far, especially with the Giants, he showed a little bit last year of, hey, he can find his wide receiver. He did it with Neighbors. Neighbors was a top 5 wide receiver for the weeks that Daniel Jones was there with him. So I really think that Daniel Jones is now in a much better situation than the Giants. It's really hard to succeed, to me, in the place that Daniel Jones had to work with his years with New York. So I think that Daniel Jones is the better quarterback, but I do think the Colts are going to want to give Anthony Richardson one last chance to redeem himself. And if it doesn't work out, if they start the season home against the Dolphins, home against the Broncos in week 2, 4 of their first 6 games are at home. So he's got some opportunities to take advantage of good matchups. And if he is unable to do it, you move to Daniel Jones. But if you start with Daniel Jones, I think it's going to really put a bad taste in the Colts fans' mouths, and especially Anthony Richardson. So give him one more chance. If it doesn't work, we move to Daniel Jones. But we both agree here that we think AR is day one starter for Indianapolis. Moving to the next one. New Orleans Saints quarterback battle, Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler. I think this debate is a little bit quicker that we can have. I do think Tyler Shuck is the better quarterback. Obviously coming in at 25, 26 years old. So I think he's older than Spencer Rattler. Even though Rattler's been in the league for 2 years. So he's played a lot of football, but it's in the collegiate levels. But New Orleans decides to take that second round pick on him. So high draft capital, in my opinion, especially when they had Gabriel was around there. Obviously, Milroe, Shador hadn't been picked. So this was a shock on day 2 of the NFL draft. And now he joins a Saints room where I think you might discuss it. We were talking about a little off the record that we just think that the Saints are going to be really, really bad this season, and they will probably end up near the top of the draft. So why not give that second round pick a chance? Because if he doesn't pay off, you probably had the first pick next year.
Yeah, Justin, I mean, obviously, yeah, I definitely am penciling the New Orleans Saints to be drafting number 1 in next year's draft. However, I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm actually not a fan of Tyler Shough there. I actually like Spencer Rattler, and I've been watching him for a while. He was at a college that I hate at first, at the University of Oklahoma, and then obviously Caleb Williams took over. And then he went to, was it not Maryland? It was South Carolina, that's right. South Carolina. And he was really up and down there. I think some of the fans were turning on there up there in South Carolina. However, Justin, I like Spencer Rattler. I think he has a stronger arm. Obviously, this offense is going to be flashy, but for Chris Olave's sake there, Justin, if you're a Chris Olave owner, I think I would be more confident if it was Spencer Rattler.
All right, so we're split there. I got Shuck. You got Rattler. We got a lot more training camp battles to discuss, so we're going to move on to the next one. We move to the running back room, but for the Dallas Cowboys, 3 new running backs in the running back room. Obviously, Rico Dowdle is now out to Carolina, and we get 3 new guys. 2 old faces, but they've had some good years in the past, and then you got a rookie from the University of Texas. I'll throw it to you, Jano. What do you think about these 3 guys?
Justin, you know how much I love my Longhorns. However, I have been seeing some reports that Jaden Blue isn't the hardest worker. I don't know if this is a rumor. I have seen a couple reports. It hurt my heart because I feel like this is a very winnable battle for Jaden Blue. We've kind of seen what we saw out of Miles Sanders. I remember a few years ago when he first got to Carolina, we thought, oh my God, this guy's going to take over the backfield. Did not happen at all. He was a massive disappointment. And then Javonte Williams, I know you love Javonte so much. And you know what? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he was there those few years with Russell Wilson and that disaster with Nathaniel Hackett in Denver. And then when Sean Payton got there, Sean Payton is very stubborn. He likes to do things his own way. He's kind of like Belichick within an offense. Like Belichick was his way with defense. Sean Payton gets in his way with offense. He's very stubborn. He kind of doesn't want to take chances. He's not like an Andy Reid in a way where he'll take a chance and try something out. And so I want to give Javonte the benefit of the doubt and actually make your day here, Justin, and say that Javonte Williams will start it off. I think he is the guy. Now, I'm not sure what the status is with Deuce Vaughn. My guy, I think, is his 3rd year out of Kansas State. I love my little guy and Deuce Vaughn. Not sure if he's still in the plans there. I'm not sure if his dad is still a part of the coaching staff since Mike McCarthy got fired. But it doesn't matter there if he's there or not. I do think that Javonte Williams has a 4 to 5 game window to prove himself there, Justin. If not, I think you got to go with the rookie out of Texas. But for now, we can go with Javonte Williams.
Yeah, I am on the Javonte Williams bandwagon here, and I think that the hype train should be rolling a little bit faster for him because if you look at these 3 guys, as you mentioned, it's a very winnable, running back room. And you look at Jaden Blue, who I think is more of a receiving back. So I just don't see him carving out a big workload. I think he plays a similar game to what Deuce Vaughn, who is still on the roster. So I didn't include him on here because we hadn't seen anything from Deuce Vaughn in the years he's been on the Cowboys. But with Javonte, people are doubting his usage as a pass catcher. But honestly, he was a really solid one under the radar for Denver even last season. Yeah. I believe he had over 30 or 40 catch. I think he had 52 catches last year with the Broncos. So he can do that. And Miles Sanders, I think, is well past his prime. Obviously, a few years ago when he was on the Eagles, he was a star. Or he was a star in the making for a season. That last year with Philadelphia, they go to a Super Bowl. Then he leaves the next year and goes to the Panthers, and things have just never been the same, never been good. He got booted by Chuba Hubbard last year. And I just think Javonte Williams, the first guy they brought in this offseason in this running back room, a guy who we've seen a few years ago really be impactful. And I think I like to attribute the last 2 years to him still trying to bounce back from his major injury that he suffered, and Sean Payton being stubborn and not wanting to make this running back room something more important. But I will say, Javonte Williams last year was really, really bad. One of the least efficient running backs in the NFL. Same goes for Miles Sanders. I think this year is a bounce back, even though the Cowboys' offensive line takes a step back, losing Zach Martin to retirement. But I think that they're going to step forward a little bit. They did draft Tyler Booker out of Alabama, but I give it to Javonte. We are aligned with Javonte Williams as the Week 1 starter. Moving to the Texans, so still in Texas, and we're talking about the wide receiver too. And I talked to Jano about this before we started recording. They do play different positions at wide receiver. Christian Kirk's more of the slot guy. Jaden Higgins is more of the outside Nico Collins type wide receiver because he is huge. But the question I want to pose to you, Genoa, is as the Texans depth chart, or as how you think CJ Stroud's going to go about targeting his wide receivers, who do you think kind of is going to claim their spot as the number 2 guy?
I'm going to go with my guy, Jaden Higgins there. I mean, 6'4", and he was a second-round pick there, Justin. I really like what I'm seeing. This past college football season, he had 87 catches with 1,100 yards, almost 1,200 yards there with 9 touchdowns there. And I think that 6'4" is easily going to get CJ Stroud's attention there. I think that, CJ Stroud, I think he likes to work with younger wide receivers, right? He knew Tank Dell, and Nico Collins is already a star. And I feel like he's going to be looking for his next guy there. I think Christian Kirk is going to be pretty good. But it's kind of like how it was in Jacksonville where, actually Christian Kirk was actually doing pretty good, Justin. But then I want to say he got hurt around week 10, 11, and spent some time on the IR for the rest of the season. Then Brian Thomas was able to shine throughout the season. That could be something that we see out of Higgins there, Justin, where I think Christian Kirk can, start off the year being a really, really great slot guy for us. But then all of a sudden Higgins by week 6 or 7 becomes T. Higgins and becomes our big shot player, kind of like a Mike Evans kind of guy where you throw it up and there he is. I really love Jaden Higgins there. And I feel like CJ Stroud is going to love him too. I'm going to go with Higgins though to have a better year than Christian.
I like what you're saying, because to me this one is actually a really tough decision for me. If you look at Jaden Higgins, obviously he's got that build to be an absolute touchdown magnet. That go ball guy where you just like CJ Stroud's about to get sacked and he just like, man, I'm just going to launch it and I'm going to trust that Higgins can come down with it. And I think he will become that receiver. I don't think it's going to be super quick off the bat. The big thing that gives me excitement with Higgins too is the Texans decided to give him a fully guaranteed contract as a second-round wide receiver. It had never happened before, and it really actually triggered all these second-round draft picks to not get a contract done until literally like last week. We didn't have Trey Harris have a contract signed, and we didn't have, obviously, Shamar Stewart. That was a first-round thing. But a lot of second-round draft picks weren't signing their rookie contracts because they're like, I see Jaden Higgins over there got a fully guaranteed deal. I want that. And so it triggered a lot of things, but the Texans must really believe in Jaden Higgins to give him a fully guaranteed contract as a rookie. That is not done often. But when you look at Christian Kirk here, when he joined Jacksonville a few years ago, there was a lot of doubt surrounding him to be that number one wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And to me, he really outperformed our expectations. I think he was really solid. And if you look at how he joined the Texans, the Jacksonville Jaguars were about to release him due to how much they were having to pay him. The Texans were like, oh no, we know that once he gets on the free agent market, somebody's going to scoop him up and we want him. So they went out there to trade for him to make sure they had him on their roster. And with them not having Tank Dell, they really need a good slot guy. With Stephon Diggs leading, they need that slot presence. And that's why I'm actually going to go with Christian Kirk to be the receiver I go with if I'm going to pick between these two. A guy who's going 30 draft picks in your fantasy football drafts behind Jaden Higgins. So nobody's talking about Christian Kirk, and I know he's getting a little bit past his prime, you could say. But I think as the slot receiver, as the short yardage guy, TJ Stroud might need to rely on him, especially because this O-line might be a little shaky in 2025. So give me Christian Kirk. We are split.
Or you just love the Aggies that much, Justin. That's might be in.
Maybe it could be a subconscious thing that Christian Kirk is a Texas A&M Aggie, and I didn't mention that. So yeah, you know that is a very good point. I won't admit to it, but I do love my Aggies. So give Christian Kirk another bit of love for this season with the Texans, as he is near home now, being with Houston, and College Station's just a little hour away. We move to the next matchup here. I think this one for me, earlier, maybe a month and a half ago, I was really on the Charbonnet train. But with the reports and how Clint Kubiak has run his offense, like he did in New Orleans, like he helped do in Minnesota, I'm really behind Kenneth Walker this season. The big thing to me with him in his career has been injuries. He has missed numerous games in each season of his career. And last year, most notably, he missed games and Charbonnet became an RB1 for those weeks. He was absolutely balling. But the big change is in the offensive coordinator position. Clint Kubiak joins the team. And if you look at it, Clint Kubiak loves to run zone. And that running zone is where Ken Walker has been his best in his career. I don't have the numbers pulled up with me, but I think Walker, in a contract year, he just cut all of his hair off too. I think he's getting really serious in a contract year, in a year where they're going to start to run the football a lot more because they got rid of DK Metcalf, they got rid of Tyler Lockett. I'm going to go with Ken Walker, but Charbonnet is one of my favorite handcuffs in all of football.
Justin, this right here, Justin, is one of the most entertaining battles that no one is talking about, because Justin, this is a tough decision. And I don't know if I can give you a straight answer on this one here, Justin, because I love Kenneth Walker at the University of Michigan State, and I really love Charbonnet when he was at UCLA. Charbonnet just feels like the Seattle guy. Like, Charbonnet is just, he's a West Coast guy. He's got the power and the speed. I'm a big Charbonnet fan. He actually won me a really close fantasy week last year, excuse me. I want to say it was week 14 at Arizona. He went for 134 and 2 touchdowns in a pivotal game I needed in one of my leagues, man. I picked him up. I had Kenneth Walker in that league, and I just knew, I remember thinking to myself there, Justin, I know the Seahawks might not be something this year, but next season, they're going to have some serious discussions. And next summer, I was thinking this in December, who is going to be the next RB guy? Here we are, Justin, at the end of July. And here it is. This is the question that I was right. It's like Kenneth Walker or Charbonnet, because these are both fantastic backs. These guys could start anywhere in the league, no matter where you put them. I want to say Charbonnet. My heart says Charbonnet, Justin. My soul says Charbonnet. But something in the back of my brain is still lighting a fire and saying, hey, just trust K9. Just trust him. Trust Kenneth Walker. He's got one more shot. I don't know I'm going to go with both, Justin. I know it's what's the point of this segment? But, Justin, these are two fantastic backs. My heart's going to say Charbonnet by a landslide, by hair, just because of Kenneth Walker's health. And he hasn't really been able to stay healthy. And I love Charbonnet, man. He's such a perfect power/speed back. He's like the perfect hybrid back that no one talks about. And I think, Justin, I hate to say this, but if Kenneth Walker has some injury issues this season, I think it's going to be Charbonnet's backfield, kind of to the point where Charbonnet might be a 3rd or 4th round pick in 2026 of next year, Justin, where we're looking at him like not saying he's Josh Jacobs, but he might be Josh Jacobs. That's all I'm saying.
No, yeah, that one performance you were talking about was a magnificent performance by Charbonnet. My quick question to you, based off what you're saying, is if you go with Ken Walker in the 4th round of your draft, is it something of a priority that you want to get Charbonnet a little bit later?
Justin, I have to strategically pick my quarterbacks and tight ends, so maybe I can get. I don't want to wait too long, Justin. I don't know if this is too much to say, but I'm thinking round 10. Maybe get your tight end, maybe get your quarterback. And if you can go round 10, I would say do not wait past round 9, round 10. Because, Justin, if Kenneth Walker gets hurt, you best believe that Charbonnet is going to be the guy possibly over the rest of the year. He might be kind of how Kyron Williams was a few years ago, where if you pick him up, you got it back for the rest of the year. Not saying like Kyron Williams didn't really have, competition at that time, but this competition is really close. You know what, Justin? to answer your question, you definitely got to get him. You got to get him for sure.
All right, that's good to know. I agree. I would like to have both if I go with Ken Walker earlier in the draft we move to the next discussion, and it is Emeka Egbuka, Chris Godwin, and Jalen McMillan. In any normal season, Chris Godwin to me would be obviously the hands down guy. But with him starting training camp on the PUP, I do think he's going to miss the start of the season. I think he misses 2 to 4 weeks, still rehabbing that injury. You got to look at it through the Buccaneers' perspective. They're trying to win a Super Bowl. They don't want to rush Chris Godwin back, and they have 2 capable wide receivers behind him. One, a first-round rookie, and Emeka Egbuka, who went to the Ohio State University, so obviously great track record of receivers coming out of that school. Then you have Jalen McMillan, who to me really impressed last year. Over the last 5 games, he was the wide receiver 7, so he was getting targeted, he was getting touchdowns. But I want to throw it to you. Who do you think's kind of the guy to go to in this 3?
Well, Justin, first off, I want to say Jalen McMillan last year had 8 touchdowns. No one is talking about that at all, Justin. 8 touchdowns. I want to say that again, Dween Nation. 8 touchdowns for Jalen McMillan. A lot of guys don't know about Jalen McMillan there. First things first, I love me some Chris Godwin. I think it's going to take probably till like week 7 or 8, really, until you can trust him in your starting lineups. This is what second major injury in the last 4 to 5 years, Justin. And and they drafted Emeka Egbuka for a reason. So here's my answer to you, Justin. I'm actually going to go with the rookie out of Ohio State. He's got fresh legs straight off the natty. The Bucs made a surprise by drafting him in the first round. And I think that Baker is going to be looking towards him a ton. And no one's really talking about it. I don't want to say he's going to get as much targets this year as his former, maybe they were teammates, Ohio State product in JSN in Seattle. But we're gonna look at the end of the year, and I think that the target share is going to be pretty darn close. Just because Chris Godwin's kind of on his last legs. You want to preserve Mike Evans as he goes for his 50,000 straight 1,000-yard season. And I feel like Godwin is going to be kind of left out and to the side there. He is a Tampa Bay great, so they're not going to rush him. And I feel like that's if the Buccaneers are in line to win the division by week 12, 13, sure, they're going to throw Godwin out there and see what. But for the majority of the year, Justin, I'm going to go with Egbuka there, and McMillan is a close second. But Justin, first-round pick. Baker Mayfield just came off his best season of his career. Mike Evans is going to have a phenomenal season, but this offense is going to want to, adapt and find the rookie there, Justin. I like Egbuka to be the guy.
Hey, I'm going to have to agree with you here. I think Egbuka is the guy, and a lot of people are just raving about him. And I know, sometimes they say don't read too much into training camp reports, but Emeka Egbuka is already running with the ones. Baker Mayfield called him a stud. Mm-hmm. And with Chris Godwin's injury, I really think that the Bucs are going to be – you might be right. It might take half a season for him to really get back into form. And by then, Egbuka might have already taken that spot, and they will be happy for that because they'll be like, we don't even have to rush Chris Godwin at all because we have a stud in Emeka Egbuka. And I was just looking at their ADPs here. Chris Godwin's going at the very beginning of the 8th round. You have Egbuka going at wide receiver 49 in the 14th round, and you have Jalen McMillan going in not even drafted. And so you have 3 guys really spread out in your fantasy drafts, and you kind of want to pick the one that's gonna hit. And the first round rookie that obviously is Ohio State alum, he did play with JSN. That's the only thing I think people might be somewhat down on Egbuka is he. When you go to the Ohio State University as a wide receiver, you play 3 years, you're in, you're out, and you're a first-round pick in the draft. Egbuka stayed for 4 years, so he stayed a little bit longer compared to guys like JSN and Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison. So I guess that could have been some doubt, and I guess you throw in that he's in a wide receiver room that has Hall of Famer Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, who's when healthy, one of the best wide receivers in the league. And then McMillan, who you said 8 touchdowns, very impressive stuff. But I think Egbuka is the guy that's worth the flyer in the later rounds of your draft. And I think he's only going to go up in fantasy drafts as we get closer to the start of the season. So I agree with you. Egbuka is the guy. For Godwin, him going in the 7th or 8th round, I just can't take the risk with all that injury lingering and him not playing. And I don't think they have a really solid timeline for when he'll be back. So Godwin's kind of off my board. And then McMillan, if you want to, I don't hate taking him as a last round flyer, second to last round guy. If you are, I don't know, let me look here real quick. if you're kind of discussing around guys like Cedric Tillman or Wandale Robinson or a guy you're going to talk about later in Quentin Johnston, like those are the guys he's kind of going around. He's going around DeAndre Hopkins. Like don't I would take McMillan over those guys in my opinion. But yeah, let's move on to the next set of guys, and it's Tyrone Tracy and Cam Scatterbo. This is a really interesting battle because Tracy, obviously, it was him and Singletary last year in the training camp battle, and Singletary started, but Tracy took over somewhat quickly, became the guy, and he was solid. He was he was an RB2 actually. He was a top 24 back when he was the starter. But now you move into a training camp where you have Cam Scatterbo, who is behind Ashton Genty, probably the best running back in college football last year with how good he played, the playoff performances, how he put Arizona State essentially on his back, even through injury. So he's got some serious grit and is a workhorse back. We saw it. We've seen it. And Tracy, who I think they were both, fourth rounders? Maybe Tracy was a fifth round pick. But obviously Tracy's the incumbent. Scatterbo's trying to take the job. What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, Justin, I actually think they're going to start the season off really strong with Tracy. Now, you did mention Singletary, who's still on the roster, and I feel like it's going to be kind of similar to last year, where they're gonna throw in Singletary, and they might kind of wait for an injury to happen. So what I'm saying here is, Justin, is we might not see much of Scatterbo in the first 5 to 6 weeks there, Justin. Maybe you'll get a couple touches here and there, but unless an injury happens or maybe Singletary gets cut or traded after preseason, I think it's going to be just a little bit of a wait for Scatterbo to see him really shine. Now, he might get 5 or 6 carries a game for the first couple of weeks of the season, maybe a little dump-off pass on third down, and that'll really be it. Not much from Scatterbo there. Now, he's a great dynasty pick. He's a great, in our mock drafts that we've had out there, Justin, I kind of went for him in the 12th or 13th round. That's kind of like for a just-in-case kind of thing. But if you can get him in a 12th, 13th round in a 12-man league there, Justin, that is a steal in my opinion. But what I'm saying is I think Tracy's going to start getting a majority of the target share. They'll throw in a little bit of Singletary, and if they're really feeling it, you'll see Scatterbo. But I think you got to wait till week 6 or 7 for him to really get touches and cut into Tracy's rushing share. And I feel like for right now, it'll be Tracy for the majority of the year.
All right, I'm looking into it more and thinking about it more, and I'm taking a step back on Scatterbo. I think you're saying, the fact that I do think Tracy will be the day one starter, and if you look at where Scatterbo's going in drafts right now, he's going at the RB 35 ahead of guys like Jordan Mason, who we really love, Javonte Williams, who's projected starter, Ramondre Stevenson, who's technically a projected starter, J.K. Dobbins, who's running with the ones. So he's going ahead of a lot of current RB1s, in my opinion, where I wouldn't take him over them. And if you look at this team, they still have a bottom 5 offensive line according to PFF. They're 28th in the league, which is not great. And you have a team that's probably going to be still down in a number of games where they don't have the wherewithal to want to give a big back a bunch of carries. They're going to need to throw it more to your guys like Malik Neighbors and Wandale and Darius Slayton. So I think Scatterbo might be getting a little too much shine. Maybe next year's that year, because I don't think Tracy is a franchise running back, where I think Scatterbo has higher potential between the two guys. But I do think Tracy will be the day one guy. And I think it's important that Scatterbo might need to be faded a little and drop a little in draft before I want to jump and take him. But yes, so we will move to the next set of running backs. And this battle is a really tough one to decide through. I'm really still thinking about it as we speak, and we'll only know once week 1 kind of starts and we see the depth charts. We got Travis Etienne, we have Tank Bigsby, and we have Bashal Tutin out of Virginia Tech, rookie running back in the 4th round. He's a small guy, but a electric receiving back. Then you have Etienne, obviously a former first-round pick for the Clemson Tigers, won national championships. Obviously, alongside the Jaguars franchise quarterback and Trevor Lawrence. Then you have Tank Bigsby, who played at Auburn, was a really solid big back, comes to Jacksonville, has a poor year 1 with the team, but then year 2, we saw some serious flashes. While we saw, guys like Etienne take a step back, but now we move into a whole new team. Liam Cohen's the guy, And obviously, everybody's looking at the promises of what he did last year with Bucky Irving and Rashad White, and even a game or two with Sean Tucker. So there's a lot of changes here, even though Bigsby and ETN are, been there for a couple of years now. But what do you think how do you think is gonna play out between these three guys?
Well, Justin, you stole the words right out of my mouth because I was thinking the same thing as you were with what went down with Tampa Bay last year. Like everybody was like, "Oh, Rashad White is the guy," right? For the first couple weeks, and even during the draft season, right? Everybody was getting Rashad White because he ended 2023 so well, right, Justin? But then, some along the way, Bucky Irvin took over. But then there was like a week or two where Sean Tucker finished like number one RB. I think it was one of those weeks in New Orleans where he had like 3 total touchdowns, 100 total, like 60 scrimmage total yards, and he was like phenomenal. And then like he was the number one pick, and then I think he probably scored like one more touchdown. I don't think he scored for the rest of the year, actually. Now I'm looking down and I'm thinking about it. And it's kind of like what's going to happen here. Now, what I will say with Tootin Brayshaw, right? Am I saying that right? Bayshaw. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Darren Sproles, like a little bit of a San Diego Sproles, a little bit of a New Orleans Sproles, kind of mixed together in one. Now, are the Jags going to use him that way? I don't know. And the thing is with ETN, I don't know what is going to be what's with ETN. I don't know. Like I'm just very confused. Like he's one of the most confusing, starters as far as running backs go in the league. It takes Bigsby. He's a straight up power back, right? He had some great games last year for the first half, and then kind of just fell off really bad. And so I don't know what direction they're gonna go here. Actually, if I'm Jacksonville, I think they're actually gonna go with Bigsby. If I'm being honest with you, I think Liam Cohen's gonna want to go with the speed back there. I don't know. Something tells me that Travis Etienne's best days are long behind him. I don't know if they're going to utilize him and give him, the workload that you would expect from someone like Travis Etienne. And I feel like by the end of the year, it's going to be Tootin Brayshaw there, Brayshaw. I think he's going to end up being the guy. Something tells me that he's going to be a better receiving back than running back. He's going to get kind of like what Rashad White was in 2023, Justin, where he's not really getting you 100 yards rushing, 80 yards rushing, but he's getting you like 60 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown, maybe like 39, 40 rushing yards, but still, at the end of the week, he's still finishing really good, great RB2. And I think by week 9, week 10, that it'll be his backfield. And I think that Travis Etienne is a trade candidate. I think Bigsby still is kind of the guy, a power workhorse guy. Kind of think about it like a few years ago, it was Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Kind of like that. But I think Travis Etienne is the guy that gets shipped off. Maybe he goes to Kansas City. Maybe they take him. I don't know. Someone needs a running back along the way and he gets traded. But I do think that it's Bigsby and Tootle by the end of the year.
Interesting. That's an interesting take because I do have a different one. I do think Etienne is going to be the main guy. I don't think that any of these guys are going to be real. To me, honestly, I don't think any of them are going to be fantasy football players that you're going to count on. Like I don't feel like, oh man, Etienne is going to end the year as a top 20, top 15 back. Either goes for Tootin or Bigsby. I think that they're all going to be kind of a bit of a committee, and it's not going to be super enjoyable. And I think that Jacksonville's identity this season is going to be through the air. I think they're going to be pass first, because you got Brian Thomas, because you got Travis Hunter. So honestly, the most valuable running back might be whoever is that third down guy, which I don't think it's going to be Bigsby. I think he's more the early down guy. So it is the battle between, is Etienne the passing down back or is it Tootin? Because Tootin, obviously, at Virginia Tech was a receiving threat, and then Etienne at Clemson was a receiving threat, but Etienne hasn't really shown that with the Jaguars. So will he take that step forward in, what was it, year 4 now? It is a contract year for Etienne, though. So he's got to play well, or he might get shipped, as you mean, or he's in line to get paid if he does well enough with Jacksonville. But I do think that with how bad the defense is, and with this identity moving towards, passing a lot with the 2 really good wide receivers and Lawrence, being a solid passer, I think that it's going to be a pass-first team, and whoever finds themselves with the most catches at the end of the year for these running backs will be the best one in fantasy. I'll lean Etienne. But I don't love all of these 3 guys. I'm not running to pick any of them where they're going in drafts right now. Moving to the next set of guys, we have Najee Harris and Omari and Hampton. Obviously, first-round pick, and Omari and Hampton, 22 overall. And then you got Najee Harris, former first-round pick, new to the Los Angeles Chargers, so two new running backs in this backfield. But last year, the Chargers surprised a lot of people with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, and J.K. became a top 12 running back when he was the starter. Obviously, he missed some games. But now you get two new guys who I think this is a much improved running back room. And the big thing is my thought process was it's going to be Najee day one, and it's going to be a weird mix where we don't love playing these guys because they're really split down the middle. I think and Najee obviously has never missed a football game in his NFL career. And so where Gus Edwards got hurt, and that's where J.K. Dobbins really took advantage of those opportunities, I do think Najee will be around, and that makes it tough. But the unfortunate news, July 4th, Najee Harris gets in a fireworks accident, and he is still unable to play. I don't know how bad his eyes have been damaged or how his body has been damaged through this accident, but it can change a lot moving forward. Hampton, to start training camp, is getting all the touches with the ones, and I think as we continue on and Najee's still absent, I think Hampton will become the guy earlier than we expected. I think Hampton, to me, is a prime league winner type where week 10 and on, he's the RB3 in fantasy, but early on, he's not getting all those touches. But with, the longer and longer that Najee is not there, the earlier and earlier, I think Omarion becomes the guy.
I think that this is Omarion's Hampton's backfield to win. I think that you mentioned the injury that Najee Harris unfortunately had on the 4th of July. And I think that's going to play into some effect. It's got to be. It's his vision, right, Justin? It's not like an ankle injury. It's like an elbow, shoulder that, we still got a month and some change before the season kicks off. But this is an eye injury, Justin. Like, how effective are you going to be, trying to score on NFL defenses there, Justin? And I wanted to so bad, Justin, to compare this backfield to what Detroit had a few years ago in Gibbs' rookie year, where they just got Montgomery, who was kind of the guy on another team, had some good games, some good season, didn't really impress, but was still good. And then you draft this guy, I want to say it was the first couple rounds of the draft, and he's flashy, and it's kind of like what Detroit had a couple years ago. But this, injury kind of sets it back for me and eliminates that comparison for me, Justin. But I think that this is Hampton's backfield all around. Maybe Najee gets involved the first couple weeks. But unfortunately, I just think that you mentioned what it was last year. It was Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards is kind of the power back, which Najee is in some ways. And, they went with J.K. Dobbins, who had a great year, which is what Hampton is there, Justin. And so I like Hampton there. He's the new, fresh guy. Justin Herbert's going to need to jump off some passes there. Hampton is the guy to go to. And I think it's a no-brainer at this point. Even though I really like Najee, if this injury didn't happen, this eye injury, I would really say it's 50-50 and compared to Detroit. But unfortunately, I'm just going to go with Hampton. I think he's much, much safer.
I agree. I'm going to agree with you with Hampton there. And I think that it's only going to cause his fantasy position right now in ADP. Where is he at? Let me look here. He is currently going in the top 40, the top 50 in your drafts. I think it's only going to go upwards as we get closer to the season. But Dween Nation, this is going to be part 1 of our episode, and we're going to cut it to part 2 to discuss more training camp battles, because there is a lot more to discuss. We have 5 or 6 more that are really important. So stay tuned, watch this one, and then watch the next one, because it's going to change the total aspect of the league for this season and moving forward. Winning training camp battles might seem little, but it's going to matter a lot when it comes to fantasy championships and picking the right guys on draft day. But thank you guys for listening. Genoa, send us out.
Yo, Dween Nation, thanks for watching our training camp battles here and prediction on what we think is going to happen this year. We're so excited for this 2025 year. So go ahead and watch all our mock drafts if you need some fantasy football help. And go ahead and watch this. This video is awesome as well. We're so excited to do part 2 of training camp battles. This is, like Justin mentioned, how you win your fantasy championships. So thank you guys for watching. We love you guys. And as always, peace.